I wish I could play the fucking guitar. This is what we've been up to.
Greasy Spoon was conceived to be the anti-gala. There's no democracy of being able to access advocacy. So you would have the $500 white tablecloth Maserati in the front of the hotel thing, but nobody ever left there an advocate. And the other side of that coin is in the advocacy space, there's no resource to generate. So it'd be like, here's a hot dog boil at the last minute in the park, and there wasn't a space in between to educate the average person. This is what's going on in our city. And at the same time, to be able to bring in chefs to really share their gift on their terms. Seeing the impact of the advocacy work on the general population, from arts, musicians, etc., being able to see themselves in the work, being able to enjoy an incredible meal, but become part of a bigger community is what I'm about. So the events that we did, New York, underneath the Williamsburg Bridge, with our partners Yo Stay Hungry, who work on education of brown and black people who are in marginalized situations, was so special. And then to skip out to the West Coast and do back-to-back dinners just outside the Tenderloin in San Francisco, and then in Oakland, in the center of gun violence for California, and just to be able to hit people with the conversation, the comfort of saying, here's food, I want to nourish you, I want to feed you, my chef friends, we're going to feed you. Now you're safe, you're in a container, and in that container we're going to go deep. So that it's an iterative process of what does the south side of Chicago really need? And who needs to be at that conversation? Who needs to be at the table? And then I will convene
Bible to your breast, gonna put it to the test. You wanted it to be blessed, and in your heart you know it to be true. You know what you gotta do.
So that's what the tour is about. And we are lining up 16, probably more like 24 destinations over the next 12 months to go and convene these conversations. By democratizing access to an event, by democratizing access to information and education, we can solve shit. But until we design like this, it's gonna stay the same. And if we can't use food as a transformative way to have these conversations, then I've failed.
And you already know, yeah, you already know how this will end.
My job rules. That's what I get to do for a living after almost 30 years of designing it. Real work takes time. You don't just walk into communities and do the work, you don't. You gotta keep showing up. And Saul keeps calling me, so I keep fucking showing up. Most important business tool in the world is this right here. I was gifted the presence of being in Attica prison about 16 days ago for the first TEDx in Attica. And transformational doesn't begin to scratch the fucking surface of what an event like that is like, where the inmates are sharing their story. And the amount meditation, imagination, creativity, and yoga was referenced from that stage of people who have sentences that eclipse 100 years was amazing. So I usually start with this, but I'm drawn and called to think of them right now. Because as I walked out of that prison and got onto a bus, I was walking out, and the prison guard, the last one was there. I was like, "Hey, is the bus out there?" And he sort of looked at me, and the amount of hatred in his eyes, the shell had worn off of the day of inviting guests in. He was like, "It's outside," but barked it at me in a way where I was like, right. We were in the container. It felt safe for a minute, but you know where you still are. We have a great gift to be able to be outside and do this. And we owe it to everybody who does not have that gift to work to make sure that they do. So language has been a big part of my development and working in impact. And this is utterly false. There's no such thing. Language is violent. It's very violent. And so in practicing nonviolence, one of the gentlemen who was in Attica with us was Arun Gandhi, who's Mahatma Gandhi's grandson, who has the most incredible sunglass frames and frames. If you've ever seen this guy, he's got like leopard frames that are this big. And so I'm talking to him, and he's like, "I'm going to do this thing, so I'm going to ask you to do it with me. If you can all stand up for a second." And he said, "This is an example of who we are. So find a partner, and one of those partners decide who has the longest hair is going to clench their fist as hard as they can like this. Okay? Look at my hand. Present it to the other partner. Okay? Now, the partner who doesn't have the clenched fist, do everything you can to get that fist open. You got 10 seconds. Okay, stop. Stop. You're going to injure yourself. Stop. Tango, come here. So, sit down. I saw I saw somebody try to tickle somebody else, which just made my fucking morning. Yeah, okay. Y'all are good. Now, Tango, close your fist and show it to me. Upside. All right. Can you open your fist? Yeah. All right. Thank you. Sit down. Why would the person next to you not do that? Of course they would. We are wired to be violent. It's how we're built. This is pervasive in society, this divisive and deadly trend of categorization of other. All of my problems are that guy's fault. Who's that guy? I don't know. Him and all the people that look like him. Who the fuck are you talking about? There is no other anymore. 7,000 people are being evacuated this morning because of a fire. Nobody cares who came from where. They're just trying to get away. It's us. And if we don't us, we're screwed. Period. A coward is incapable of exhibiting love. It's the prerogative of the brave to show love. Fuck, I wish politicians knew that. That guy said it. We locked him up for it. That was cool. This is a question that I think is really important. So I rewrote this entire talk yesterday with the intention of giving it last night, but 2 more Guinness World Records were set last night. The 2 longest Biff talks back to back. 45 and 51 minutes. Holy shit. If I go over, I don't care. That was next level. So the diagnosis of this, the textbook diagnosis, I am an addict of ethnography and synthesis. Malcolm Gladwell is my Jesus Christ sometimes, all right? Synthesis matters, really understanding. So when I ask people, what's it mean to be mentally ill? They say stuff like this: long-lasting sadness and instability. Uh-oh. Excessive anxiety and worry. Oh, shit. Social withdrawal. Uh-oh. Trouble sleeping. So I'm mentally ill by definition. Anybody else identify with those four things? No shit. They say it's 25% of the population. Well, if that's the description of what it means to be mentally ill, it's a lot more than 25%. And we are causing some of these problems, and we got to solve them. So I'm like, okay, you guys are so smart. That's what it means to be mentally ill. What's the prescription? Exercise, nourishment, gratitude, practicing altruism. Oh, that word gives me the heebies. I was like, okay, so I did all that. I still feel like shit. Because it's about me. And when we just work for self, we don't feel better. Period. In short times, Amazon counts on it. That Prime delivery comes, and for 7.5 seconds, I am full of joy. Till I look at the box that's empty and go, God, that's almost a whole tree. I loved this yesterday. It was, I think, one of the favorite things I heard said. Living our way into new ways of thinking. What we did last night at dinner was a collaborative effort that took a lot of trust. From Biff, from Saul, from the staff, from Amos' house. There's a lot of trust there. From Easy. Easy and Amos had never collaborated together on a dinner before. That was the first one they worked together on. And they were so stoked. So stoked that they sang us their joy. We have to live our way into it. Just try it. What's the worst thing that could happen? I mean, as much as we all wanted a rubber chicken conference dinner last night, and we ached for that, we had turkey instead. It was fucking delicious. So I was like, what would it look like if I wrote the prescription to mental illness? Well, to my own, I took exercise, and I turned it to this. I don't exercise enough, obviously, but eating is a full-time gig. But what about exercising your privilege to help other people? What about nourish those who don't have the means? What about gratitude? Showing it to someone else every day. It's just simple. Jeff Leitner, I love and appreciate the way you show up in the world for us unabashedly. Period. I tell Jeff that a lot. That's why he's not reacting very much. But that's all it looks like. What, you can't tell somebody else they're amazing every day? It feels wonderful for me because I know he knows that a little bit more now. Altruism. Embed good in every part of your life. Every part. Steal a pair of socks to give it to somebody else. Now, the last part, the doctors never told us about, which is just doing shit. And so I think a lot about the cost of a whole thing. What's it cost to have a community well? Right? Darden just sang that song, and literally the lyrics were like, imagine if we all had enough food. Well, we have enough. Imagine if nobody had to be poor. Nobody has to be fucking poor. It's not real anymore. This is so true. It's an act. And it's completely unnecessary. We live with abundance. We heard that yesterday too. The first time I heard this was at Singularity University. I've told this story, so I won't tell it again here because I've really upset some people. But I heard we're not living in a time of scarcity. We're living in a time of abundance. And I got triggered really deeply. Because I was like, oh yeah? The guy I stepped over this morning to get into this hotel doesn't feel that way. But the fact of the matter is, we have it. We're just not giving it. So they were right. I was just mad. If the community's unwell, we're all unwell. Period. This gentleman saying, I walk through the streets of New York, and there's too many homeless people for me to engage with. You think he feels okay by the time he gets to work? Of course not. He is either compartmentalizing, pushing that shit down, pretending it's not happening. He's doing something, though. There's an action there. When he left his house, he felt here. By the time he gets to work, he's here. By the time the workday is here, but you're down here. Imagine if we could start removing those things. We can. Nobody walks past this and doesn't feel something or do something. But what can we do? First words when I walked in here this morning, one of the staffers was like, there's 4 people I pass on my way to Biff to work every day. They all hold signs. What should I do? And I was like, they're all individuals. You're going to have to ask them. And find one that likes you and you like them, just like making friends. And then do some work. Because this shit is unforgivable. We're all unwell. This slide, oh wow. First of all, shout out the AV guys for like crushing it this whole time. Can we give them a huge round of applause? They just did something there that'll stay between us, but it took a lot of work. This guy right here, he's holding a sign. His sign is real specific. I'm an Iraq veteran. Here's my proof of service since people don't believe me or don't want to. 20 months sober, 7-month-old baby boy. Veteran Affairs is not helping me. I'm severely struggling. Anything helps. God bless you. This is the infantry I was in. I have PTSD. I need soy baby formula, diapers, Metro cards, baby wipes, baby food, and a second job, please. That part should really hit. He's already working. Minimum wage is so low that 80% of the people in North America are one paycheck away from this guy. 80. Poverty is an act of violence. Now, this is the real kicker. The cost of this. An average of 3 to 5 times more money to the taxpayer to keep someone homeless than to house them. That's an act of violence. That's emergency services, psychiatric care, ORs. These aren't just things I'm making up. These are studies, deep studies. Vancouver, since 2008, we've been studying this. San Francisco, Kevin Fagan does incredible work since 2013. To end it, these stats are wrong because we're basing them on homeless numbers of around 700,000. Would cost $20 billion to end people being unhoused across America. So really 40 billion. Let's just double it up to be safe. This is an incredible visual. The cost of ending homelessness would be the same as the subsidies for the oil industry for 1 year. The amount Americans will spend on Christmas decorations and flowers for 1 year. It is a third of the responsibly cutting nuclear weapons spending. And this one here, it's a quarter of eliminating capital gains tax cuts for 1 year. We would end fucking homelessness. These are real numbers. But we do this instead. And we just get mad at each other and point fingers. It's an unnecessary act of violence. So, now that we know that we have to light up all of our politicians, which I think most of us in the room are already doing, let's move on to food. Now, if we believe that all of the things that are leading to our mental illness are intrinsically connected, which they are, this is the leading factor. If you ask somebody who's unhoused why they continue to use, or you ask an addict why they continue to use, they are painfully lonely. Does anybody else ever feel lonely in this room? Right? And we have all the resource in the world. So, how do we get together? Well, we're doing it right now. But this is something that I'm deeply, deeply invested in. We've stopped teaching people and learning how to really cook because we say we're too busy. Yet we binge Netflix. Kids love food. And I mean, this kid 3D printed me a pancake. This is for a dinner I did for the United Nations. I'm serious. He brought it over to me. He's incredible. He's also a genius, but he's part of the Future Food Institute that I work with in conjunction with the FAO. We did 2 dinners together, one in Iceland, where we were looking at a glacier that's lost 80% of its girth. And this one was in Bushwick, and I was working with food that was literally, okay, so there's a company called Bad Apple Produce. They sell ugly fruit and ugly vegetables, right? To hipster kids so they can talk about it, me included. I said to them, give me your waste. And they're like, oh, you don't want our waste. I was like, all of your waste. And I cooked a 6-course meal with 1 induction burner for 100 delegates of the UN. And this is what this kid thought of it. So the question all the time that I would get is this: can I cook with you? And I would always say, my reflection would be, do you know how to cook? And 9 times out of 10 people are like, I have no idea. And I'd say, how the fuck is that helpful to me? They'd be like, what do you do in real life? Because that's useful. They're like, oh no, I'm a UX designer. That could never help. I'm like, have you seen social impact websites? I'm a CPA. I'm useless. I'm like, oh my God, my books. Come help me. I don't need you to cut the corners off sandwiches. But as people kept coming and kept hitting me, I was like, okay. I'm going to design for you. So we designed this thing called Plenty of Plates. 12 people from corporate or from community come in. It's a 7-hour shift. You cut the tops off, onion bags, make everything soup to nuts for our community with your people. We teach you how to cook for 75. All right? Then you go into my diner, you print out menus, you set up the tables, flowers, candles, music, and you invite 75 people from my community, largely indigenous as of late, culturally sensitive menus, and you serve them. There's no training, there's no disclaimers, there's no waivers, there's nothing. You come in, you cook, you serve people who are struggling. And it is fucking transformative. One gentleman came in with his tech company. The people from the tech company forced his hand to come. He came, he's buttoned up, he's not interested in being there. He's cooking, he's still not interested. Finishes serving, still disinterested, and my managing director looks at him, he starts to get a little emotional. He walks up and he's like, hey, are you okay? Like, I know this can be confronting. He's like, yeah, it's not that. He's like, well, what is it? He said, I just served one of my employees. That's why we do the work for these folks. But that's turned into something else, which is what we did last night, where I'm asking the question, can I cook with you, Amos House? Would that be okay? Can I come in and cook for 500 with you, with my team? Would that be okay? And it's been beautiful. This was in Bozeman, Montana, pre our event we talked about called Hatch last week, where we took 17 kids from 5 to 20, all who are living in shelter or temporarily unhoused, fingers crossed. And we all cooked together all day. And it was incredible. And I was like, I have too many people in this group. What am I going to do? And as I'm driving, I'm like, I'm going to get them to build the table. So they went out and forged for the table settings, and you can probably see here, they're stunning. They made like wreaths. I thought they were going to come with a couple crunchy leaves. And they made this incredible table setting and cooked all of this food. And I don't have enough time to show you all the pictures, but I had 3 girls with their hands in coleslaw, that big bowl in the center. The reflections from them about the power that that creates and the agency around their life, that shit is forever. We demystify it. We fed 40 people at lunch, 40 people at dinner. I brought food to Hatch the next day. It was $100. Knowing how is where our issues sometimes lie. So we asked Amos House if we could cook with them. It's okay, don't panic, the AV guys are geniuses. This is the ladies at Amos House on the left-hand side on the line. On the right-hand side is their community garden. They're based here in Rhode Island. They have 16 buildings, an annual operating budget that's massive but needs a lot more help. And they are here for everybody in Rhode Island. We're picking peppers. The parsley that went into the dressings that were on the turkey last night came out of that garden. The women online, I went to set up my station. So I was right beside the lady there in yellow. You can see my plaid shirt. The woman to my left, I had a parsley set up and a tomato set up, and I was going to garnish this risotto I made. And she looked me dead in the face and said, we don't have time for that here. We had words. The parsley went on, but boy, she doesn't like me. This work doesn't all have to be sad. It can be really fucking fun. You guys have probably met Erica and Haven. Haven is the super exuberant one. 4th from the right, she's our managing director of the U.S. Erica was wearing a Yankees hat online, which is brave here. Love her for it. And then, of course, the executive chef, Michael, on the end. This is what they do every day. They're there for people. All right. Saul, can you join me up here? Folks, how many of you have been to Biff before when I've spoken? Show of hands. All right, so you know what we're about to do. Saul, I'm going to say some words to you. You're going to say them back to me. Pretend that that doesn't say what it does. And yeah, it's totally fine. 32. Not bad, right? Brother, as always, I promise to leave the world a better place than I found it. Say the same.
Brother, as always, I promise to leave the world a better place than the way I found it.
I believe you, as always.
I believe you too.
For those of you who haven't been here before, please share those words with somebody next to you. This is a socially binding contract that you will be beholden to. Okay, grab a seat so I can wrap up. I'm not trying to set another record. This matters. This is my closing thought for today. In the nonviolent army, there's room for everyone who wants to join. There's no color distinction. There's no examination. No pledge, except that, as a soldier in the armies of violence is expected to inspect his or her carbine and keep it clean, nonviolent soldiers are called upon to examine their greatest weapons, their heart, their conscience, their courage, and sense of justice. That was this guy. He had some doozies, didn't he? We locked him up too. When things get darkest, we gotta be our brightest. We gotta love our hardest. That's me. Thank you.